Okay, let's see what we have here. That's the end of game one, it looks like. In Mortred's blue-white tempo deck with Pippin as the commander versus Hazor's Azusa mono green. That's a really bad matchup for blue-white tempo. You can keep Azusa down, but if you can't deliver the kill quick enough, then the large creatures completely overrun you. And even keeping Azusa down, you have to have Stern Scolding, with Wash Away currently being banned in the league, or hope you'd go first and waste a 2-mana counterspell on their commander who's just going to ramp more lands. Here we go, into game 2. Let's look at Hazor's hand. Let's see if this is a keep. With only 4 lands, well, Hazor decides to keep, although they're not going to get much value off of Azusa, perhaps valuing Haywire might here. Opponent leads with a Skymarcher Aspirant at 2-1. We're probably going to see the commander played here, although we might see Harbin, Adanto Vanguard, played earlier, because there's not much Azusa can do in the way of threatening creatures. Pippin comes down first. It's less damage, but with protection. Perhaps Mortred valuing that. Hazor's turn. Plays a tap land, passes. So next turn we're definitely going to see Azusa come down, or perhaps Titania. Swings in, there's 4 damage on Mortred's turn, and plays out Harbin, Vanguard Aviator, and Mausoleum Wonder. Passes the turn. We are indeed seeing Hazor play out Azusa, and 2 lands. It brings him up to 5 lands. Up the Beanstalk comes out, which is going to be nice next turn with Thragtusk. Thragtusk going to go a long ways towards helping with the aggression, generating a blocker and life. Mortred's turn draws Recruitment Officer. Unfortunately, no double white, so can't play Steel Seraph to give a second creature flying. Holds up Lofty Denial. Lofty Denial with Harbin and Mausoleum Wander can do actually a lot of work here, especially if Azusa doesn't draw that many more lands, or tries to go for something like Nilia's Intervention. So swings in, there's a block on Skymarcher Aspirant with Haywire Might, but with Pippin, Mortred is able to give Skymarcher Aspirant protection from creatures. Now it's Azusa's turn. Hazor draws Scoot Swarm, which is a great way to stabilize here. Hazor's probably taking a little think. There are a lot of choices. Thragtusk, probably the least interesting of the choices there, in my opinion, but goes for it, and that gets countered. So that might have been an attempt to draw out the counter spell, because there's a lot of better things Hazor has to do. Mortred's turn plays out by Elspeth's command. Still only 1 plane. Pippin gets flying. And now we have quite a few flying blockers. So this is a swing for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage. And Mortred's going to give protection to the Recruitment Officer, which gets blocked by Azusa. And now Hazor is staring down lethal on board. Plays Winding Way, draws a lot of land. Is going to maybe play Scoot Swarm and a land to create 2 blockers, but instead plays out the land first, and then goes for Nilia's Intervention, dealing 1 damage to each creature with flying. Curious that they left a land open and didn't choose 2 damage there, because that would have taken out Harbin as well. So that seems like a misplay. Oh, twice, sorry. Nilia's Intervention does twice X damage. So here's 5 damage. Still not enough mana, unfortunately, for Steel Seraph either way. Hazor passes. Mortred passes to Hazor. Hazor plays out Titania. Thinks about playing out Titania, Voice of Gaia. 6 mana, Zeus in the command zone at 5. 3 lands in hand, so could potentially play out Azusa for 5, and then play out 3 lands with 4 mana. So could play 3 lands, then Scoot Swarm, then land again. Decides to play Titania, Voice of Gaia, but needs to have some way to deal with the flying creatures from Hazor, or is just dead on board. So Wall of Blossoms comes out, into Blast Zone, into Pass, and unless Titania, Voice of Gaia has reach, this is game. Mortrid draws the command tower, which lets them play out finally Steel Seraph, 3/3 flyer, and now they have double with by Elspeth's command, giving one of their tokens flying, and Steel Seraph giving the recruitment officer flying now has lethal either way. So that's going to be game 2. Some interesting choices there. Of course, the problem with Azusa as a deck for people who are less experienced in it is that there are so many different choices each turn, and you really have to know how your deck works well. It has some toolbox elements, it has some aggro elements, anti-aggro elements as well, and if you don't know exactly what to search up or exactly what to play, you have a difficult time getting out of situations like that. In this case, where Mortrid was able to successfully pressure the life total early on with the blue-white aggro, with the Pippin deck. It's going to bring them to a game 3. With Azusa leading. So here we go. Only 3 lands, but because of Elder Gargoth has her ups to keep, hoping to top deck some lands. Winding Way can also, of course, help get lands in hand. Meanwhile, Mortrid keeps 3 land hand with 2 1-drops, a 2-drop, and a removal spell. Draws Paladin class. Goes ahead and plays a Hollowed Fountain, having entered the battlefield untapped by paying 2 life, and is going to lead with an Esper Sentinel. Hazor plays Winding Way. Mortrid gets to draw off of that because of the Esper Sentinel, and winds up with 3 lands in hands from Winding Way. So this Elder Gargoth could potentially be a huge problem, but Mortrid has drawn a Lofty Denial, so if they hold that up, they could potentially counter the Elder Gargoth, which is going to prevent a lot of life gain. And otherwise, Hazor's hand is looking not so impressive at the moment. There is a World Breaker and an Up the Beanstalk. Mortrid plays out Pippin, swings in with Esper Sentinel. So Hazor, as expected, is going to play out Azusa on their turn, and play out the extra lands, play out Up the Beanstalk, opting not to play around Esper Sentinel. Mortrid's turn. Mortrid has 3 lands now up, so this is going to be an important turn. Mortrid might not know, but do you want to hold up Lofty Denial for the Gargoth or for whatever else, or not? It seems like that might be the case, as Mortrid plays Portable Hole, targeting Up the Beanstalk, preventing further draw from Azusa. And now is going to go to attackers first. We're going to go to combat, swing in with Pippin for 2, dropping Hazor to 22 life. Now is the question, do you play out something knowing Azusa has 5 lands? And they do. This is an aggressive choice. And now Hazor, with Mortrid fully tapped out, is going to play out Scoot Swarm, And with Azusa is going to quickly flood the board with Scoot Swarm tokens. Now, Mortrid isn't out of this yet by any means. They have a lot of ways to give themselves flying, but the amount of Scoot Swarm tokens on the board is going to quickly grow unmanageable. In fact, might already be at the point where it's completely unmanageable. So we're going to go up to 15, I believe, Scoot Swarm tokens. Mortrid typing in chat. Well, that got out of hand fast. Yes, indeed. So that's why I said it was a rather aggressive play by Mortrid to play out Adanto Vanguard there, knowing the amount of lands that Azusa is on. Might have been wiser to hold up Lofty Denial after their one-drop. Mortrid draws for turn, and now has a 1/1 Esper Sentinel, a 2/2 Pippin, and a 1/1 Adanto Vanguard, facing down a board of 16 Scoot Swarms and Azusa. So at this point, with the extra draw being a land, there's not much that Mortrid has to offer in terms of aggression and is going into the tank. Now, Mortrid's hand has Pippin, has Denick, Pious Apprentice, which is going to give a little bit of lifelink. And can chump block, but Mortrid is going to fully play out their creatures here, perhaps acknowledging the situation they're in, the need to block, and Azusa Hazor at Mortrid's end step is going to sacrifice Shire Terrace to search up a forest, and is now going to go up to 32 Scoot Swarms, which I believe is just lethal on board. Oh, and with a Finale of Devastation, Hazor could perhaps tutor up something interesting here, but just going to go into the combat step and swing in with all of their swarms. Now, Hazor is going to take 26 damage and gain 2 life, so go up to 25, and that's game. Mortrid loses and is eliminated from the tournament, and Hazor wins and continues. Good games, Mortrid. Well done taking the blue-white tempo deck to the league. Good win against Azusa, a matchup you are definitely not favored in. We will be right back as we look for the next game. All right, and with that, we're into the second match of an aggro matchup. We have on the main screen Dark Flame Master playing Judith, the Scourge Diva, against Freya Leeser playing Adeline. Now, Adeline, very interesting to find here in the losers bracket. Lost to Fading Cargo's Sithis, Harvest Hand, Enchantress deck in the main bracket. And is here unexpectedly. Anyways, back to the game. We have Dark Flame Master, who plays out a Evolved Sleeper, turn 1, and is going to swing in on their second turn. Meanwhile, Freyleaser has, as their turn 1 player, Giver of Runes and is deciding whether or not to block. Does not block, so Dark Flame Master is going to level up the Evolved Sleeper, and with the Spectacle cost, going to cast a Skewer the Critics on Mother of Runes and Giver of Runes, really valuing the ability to remove the protection. But Freyleaser on their next turn plays out a Selfless Savior. Unfortunately, Dark Flame Master's third land comes in tapped. So they go ahead and play out a Tenacious Underdog instead and swing in with Evolved Sleeper. Meanwhile, Freyleaser is going to go ahead and play out Adeline. Pass the turn. Dark Flame Master has 4 mana now that plays a Swamp. Plays Judith, has a 3/3 Evolved Sleeper and the Tenacious Underdog, and is going to swing in with both. Of course, they both get the +1/+0 buff from Judith and ping for 1 on death, meaning that Freya can't block with Adeline without having to sacrifice Selfless Savior. But now Freya on their turn draws a plane, plays it, and is going to play out Mothra, Supersonic. Can't read, but the 3/4 flyer who, upon your creature's death, revives them with a flying counter. So this is going to present some challenges, obviously, for Dark Flame Master, because now each of Freyleaser's creatures are going to come back after death. They're going to be flyers this time, so it's going to be hard to race. You're going to be sacrificing your creatures, and the opponent's going to be getting theirs back. So first, in any case, Dark Flame Masters is going to go to combat and swing in with Tenacious Underdog and Evolved Sleeper. And this is just difficult in so many ways now due to the 3/4 flyer that revives your creatures and the Selfless Savior being on the board. So they have in effect, Freyleaser has in effect double protection. Blocks Evolved Sleeper with Adeline and does not block Tenacious Underdog, meaning they drop to 10 life. Now, Judith the Scourge Diva triggers upon the death of Evolved Sleeper. And Dark Flame Master is choosing out where to ping. Do they want to ping Adeline, who's just going to come back as a flyer next turn anyways, or do they want to ping Selfless Savior, which seems to be the case, who's still going to come back, but then is only going to get to have 1 activation. So Freyleaser goes ahead and activates Selfless Savior, targeting Mothra, Supersonic Queen, and then plays an Ob Nixilis with the casualty cost paid and targets the reanimated Selfless Savior, who Freyleaser sacks, targeting Adeline. Now, Dark Flame Master is going to minus on one of the Obnix, on both of the Obnix lists. So now has Judith and the tokens, which are both 2/1s thanks to Judith's ability, but meaningfully do not ping upon their death because only non-token creatures ping upon their death with Judith. Back to Dark Flame, to Freyleaser's turn. Freyleaser is going to play out Dauntless Bodyguard, and then Thalia's Lieutenant, which is going to buff Dauntless Bodyguard, the Thalia token, and Thalia. Is going to swing in with only the flyer with Mothra, targeting one of the Obnix, There's not anything Dark Flame Master can do about this. The Adeline token buff nicely helping with Thalia's Lieutenant to give it a +1/+1 counter, as those tokens are humans. And now Dark Flame Master's choosing how to block. Adeline also swinging in here. Again, the tokens don't ping upon their death, so these are going to be chump blocks. Dark Flame Master is going to go ahead and chump one of the tokens, the 1/1 with Judith, and leave their other 2 tokens up, taking the damage to face. Now, Freyleaser is actually out of action in their hands with just planes. And here we have Dark Flame Master, who's looking at Volatile Arsonist as perhaps their play for the turn. It's a 5-drop with Menace and Haste, and whenever it attacks, if it's day, it deals 1 damage to up to 1 target creature, planeswalker, and player, and if it's nighttime, it deals 2 damage instead. So this is a possible play that can help start pinging down some of the creatures, certainly, on Freyleiser's side. Freyleiser is going to have to discard a card as Dark Flame Master pluses Ob Nixilis. They go ahead and discard the plane, so they are now out of cards in hand. Now, Dark Flame Master is really eyeing that Volatile Arsonist here. Of course, because it has Menace, it needs to be double blocked, but Freyleiser does have the creatures to do that. So this is a turn. It's quite important. They're a little bit behind on board, and they do go ahead, Dark Flame Master, and play the Volatile Arsonist. So now they have the 2 tokens, Judith and the Volatile Arsonist, on board. They're facing down the Adeline. Opponent still has the Mothra, so any blocks here are just going to be, any deaths on Freyleiser's side are just going to be reanimated with a flying counter on them. Freyleiser's turn. Freyleiser draws planes. So if Dark Flame Master survives, at least Volatile Arsonist is going to flip to Nightbound, but goes ahead and swings in with everything, facing, sending the Mothra towards Ob Nixilis and everything else face. So that's Adeline swinging for 7 after the token trigger, 1 2/2 token, the 3/2 Dauntless Bodyguard, the what's going to be a 3/3 Thalia's Lieutenant, and the 1/1 token face. But reconsiders. Freyleiser reconsiders and sends in Mothra at Obnix, still, the flyer, unblockable, makes sense, and Adeline face at Dark Flame Master, as well as Thalia's Lieutenant. Is eyeing Dauntless Bodyguard, but maybe wants to keep it alive so they can use the double trigger if necessary in the future. Perhaps keeping 2 blockers back as well for Volatile Arsonist, although all right, here we go. So now we're on to blocks. Dark Flame Master sends 1/2/1 blocker at Adeline. And there's just a really tight spot here in general. These sort of situations are really tough to get out from behind when you're versus Adeline and you don't have things like board wipes. You have to really make efficient trades, but when they've got something like Mothra on board that can just reanimate any of their creatures that die with a flying counter, your trades all become super inefficient. So Dark Flame Master does send the pings from the tokens that die, which still get pings, not because of Judith's ability, but because they are the Obnix tokens. 1 face and 1 to take out one of the Adeline tokens. It's Dark Flame Master's turn. Draws a Tiefling Outcast goes ahead and plays Lelia, Blade Reforged. They get the switch to nighttime. And they're going to go ahead and send in Lelia and the Volatile Arsonist, Dire Strain Anarchist, as it's called at night, and it's going to do 2 damage to a target of their choice. So they're going to go ahead and target Face with 2, and one of the Adeline tokens, that's a 2/2, thanks to an earlier buff from Thalia's Lieutenant. And Lelia is going to go ahead and exile Bloodthirsty Adversary, giving them a play if they want. It's definitely a chump blocker, although they're not going to be able to activate its ETB by paying 3 extra. There's a double block on Volatile Arsonist, or Dire Strain Anarchist, as it is at night, with with Adeline and Dauntless Bodyguard. So Adeline's a 5/5, Dauntless Bodyguard a 3/2, and with the Anarchist a 6/5. He's going to have to choose who to take out here. In any case, the one that he takes out is going to be reanimated as a flyer. Now, it goes ahead and takes out the Dauntless Bodyguard instead of Adeline, and swings in with Lelia. Lelia gets through because both blockers were on the Anarchist, and the death trigger from the Anarchist, thanks to Judith, goes ahead and hits Face. So he chooses, Darkflame Master chooses to play out Tiefling Outcast instead of Bloodthirsty Adversary. I'm not quite sure why. And it is Freyleaser's turn. He draws Selfless Samurai and is going to play it. Now, he can't swing in here with anything but his flyers because the death triggers on any of his ground creatures from Judith are going to hit Face, and he will die. So he has, in effect, no way to kill Darkflame Master. And because he's only at 2 life, Freyleaser is, next turn when Darkflame Master swings in with all of his creatures, even if they're blocked, Freyleaser is going to take from the Judith deck triggers 2 damage to Face. So this is in effect lethal on Bard from Darkflame Master. Freyleaser has no way to close it out, and recognizing that is going to go ahead and swing with everybody while emoting good game. Darkflame Master is going to block the 2 biggest creatures. He'll still take 6 damage, but with the 2 death triggers, he's going to be able to take Freyleaser down to 0 life. So really well played from Darkflame Master. That was a difficult knot to thread, falling behind on board with the reanimation creature from Freyleaser, and that's going to be an even series. At 1-1. And I will be right back. Okay, and let's see, I'm back. Here we are in our tied game. It's turn 2, only one creature on Dark Flame Master's board. Down comes Adeline with one indestructible creature from Frailizer and the Dauntless Bodyguard. This is already looking really, really tough for Dark Flame Master. Significantly behind on board. Has to figure out what to play here. Freyleys are still at full life. Swings in with the Tenacious Underdog, hoping for possibly a trump block by Adeline, in which case can play the 1 mana burn spell to finish Adeline off. Or, in this case, since there were no blocks, can play Spawn of Mayhem for its spectacle cost, a 4/4 flyer that pings each player for 1 damage at the beginning of his upkeep. Decent chump blocker against that which Adeline has to offer. Adeline plays out Intrepid Adversary, though, and is able to pay 2 mana for 1 Valor counter on it. So now all of his creatures are buffed. They all gain +1/+1, and now Spawn of Mayhem, unfortunately, is not as good a blocker. Seasoned Hollowblade, with 2 cards in hand, can still be made indestructible, and Adeline is going to be able to swing in for 10 total. Rough place for Dark Flame Master, although the Spawn of Mayhem, because of its trigger, does go up to a 5/5 now, and the Ranger's Firebrand is able to take out the Intrepid. The 1 mana burn spell is able to take out the Intrepid Adversary, getting rid of those Valor counters and making Tenacious Underdog the Ring Bearer. And with 3 mana is now able to play up Kitesail Freebooter. Is going to get a look at Freylizer's hand, sees there's a Soldier of the Pantheon and an Anointed Peacekeeper there, neither of which are super threatening. But now we're in a situation where Dark Flame Master can't swing in. There's an Anointed Peacekeeper coming down from Freylizer on their turn. They draw a Mishra's Foundry for their turn. They're going to be able to play out both creatures and swing in with Adeline, which is going to put Dark Flame Master in a very precarious position where they're going to have to choose, do they chump block with Spawn of Mayhem, lose Spawn of Mayhem, knowing that Freylizer will be able to replay Adeline next turn, or do they chump block with something like their Freebooter or their Tenacious Underdog, hoping that they can grow still Spawn of Mayhem big enough to the point where it can chump block Adeline. Now, there could also be an attack all coming out here, because Seasoned Hollowblade, again, can attack in and discard Mishra's Foundry. And indeed, it does look like that's going to be the case. So there's an attack all coming in. Freyleys are recognizing they are ahead on board, and with the mana that they have, can afford to really just swing in and wreak some havoc. Now, Dark Flame Master has to be really careful with these blocks because they're going to take 1 damage from Spawn of Mayhem at the beginning of their upkeep. And they don't want to just die here. So they go ahead, they block Adeline, Seasoned Hollowblade, who activates to give itself indestructible, and Dauntless Bodyguard. They draw for turn. Now they have, unfortunately, not enough to play 2 creatures unless they're going to take damage from Agadim's Awakening. They can play Kumano Faces Kakkazan, but it's not a creature, and because the Anointed Peacekeeper hit the Robber of the Rich, it now costs 4 mana to play. So they're going to go ahead and play out Judith, swing in with Spawn of Mayhem, and concede. So that game, close for a moment to balancing out with the Spawn of Mayhem, but ultimately the slow board presence of Dark Flame Master was not enough to keep up with Adeline. So thank you, Dark Flame Master, for bringing Judith to a tournament. It's the first. Congratulations for getting this far, and we will be back in a little while with the next match. All right, so just to catch people up on the bracket while we're waiting, we have, in fact, let me see if I can add a screen for the bracket. Let's show everybody what I'm talking about. Can I add a web page, actually, that I would be able to edit? Browser. All right, that's the input that I'm looking for. Hopefully this does not crash. Remove the screen capture. All right. So here we are. The only problem is, how do I edit the browser? Interact. Okay. So here we can see the playout of the bracket so far. Flash Fan Ragavan beat Dark Flames Master Judith 2-1 in the first round. Uro, piloted by Birthing Potter, beat Atraxa 2-0, piloted by Dr. Django. Hazor's Azusa lost to Fading Cargo's Sithis 2-1, and Freya's Adeline beat Mortred's Pippin 2-0 in the round of the second round. In the winners bracket, Birthing Potter's Uro beat Flash Fan's Ragavan 2-1. Fading Cargo's Sithis beat Freyleaser's Adeline 2-0. And in the losers bracket, Dark Flame Master's Judith beat Dr. Django's Atraxa 2-0, and Hazor's Azusa beat Mortred's Pippin 2-1. In the third round, in the winners bracket, we have yet to play, and we'll get to that in a moment, but in the losers bracket, Freyleaser's Adeline beat Dark Flame's Master's Judith 2-1, and Flash Fan's Ragavan beat Hazor's Azusa 2-1, giving us in the fourth round, the round of 4 in the losers bracket, Freyleaser's Adeline versus Flash Fan's Ragavan, and in the winners bracket, Birthing Potter's Uro versus Fading Cargo's Sithis of the Harvest hand. Now, we are waiting for the winners. Having some technical difficulties with the winners. For those of you who are not aware, there is a direct challenge bug going on right now, where if you are unfortunate, your client will be bugged, and anytime you try and direct challenge, it will say that you are unable to load your deck. And there is nothing short of a complete reinstall that will fix this, although even a complete reinstall on all of the platforms on which you have an Arena client will not guarantee a fix. And sometimes it just magically is able to work again after a series of failed attempts, after some time of waiting, some random time of waiting. This is a huge bug, and it's a known bug, and it hasn't been updated. There was a Historic Brawl event, a tournament recently held by Ultimate Guard. It's a 2-day tournament, the 4C, the Content Creator Charity Cup. And they had the same issue with some of their players having to resort to playing public queue matches and counting those as wins or losses instead of playing other players. And this is just a really sorry state of things. So please, if you can, if you're listening, contact Wizards, ask them to fix this direct challenge bug. While you're at it, ask them to fix Historic Brawl so you can have a proper direct challenge match using a friendly Brawl rebalance deck, as Historic Brawl works right now in direct challenges. For those of you who don't know, any card you put in, no matter what your deck type is, will get converted to that card's original printing, because the only way to play Historic Brawl is through Friendly Brawl direct challenges, using the Friendly Brawl deck type. And Friendly Brawl uses the original versions of cards, not the rebalanced version of cards. So if you play, let's say, Teferi Time Raveler in your Brawl deck, if you play in the public queue, it will be the 4-mana rebalanced Teferi. However, if you use that same exact deck in a direct challenge, it will load as a friendly Brawl deck without telling you. So you have no notification that this is a different format you're playing, and your Teferi will now be the original 3-mana Teferi Time Raveler, which of course is banned in our Brawl League and the tournaments, as well as on the queue. So this means you can never replicate the queue experience in direct challenge. You can never have a competitive setting where you have the exact same rules as the queue. And we, as the Brawl Hub community, have decided to deal with that by completely deviating from what is the standard ban list, and we have our own community ban list, which is great for us, but we really wish that Wizards would make it just a little bit easier for Brawl players. And this isn't even a big change, they just need to add Friendly Brawl Rebalanced as a deck type you can select in challenge matches. We have a support thread going with over 100 upvotes. If you would visit the Brawl Hub server and check out our general and our league chats, you will find a link to that. Please go and upvote it if you don't mind. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump into our next match, which is the losers match. We have Freyleaser. I'm not sure what the score is. I know Freyleaser just won their last match. So we have them on Adeline versus Flashfan's Ragavan. So indeed, it does look like Fading Cargo for the winner's bracket with Sithis is encountering the bug, and they are unable to play versus Birthing Powder, so they're going to try and quick reinstall. And while that's happening, here we are in the loser's bracket. We have Flashfan, who was on the play, not knowing how many wins they have. They play Ragavan turn 1. Freyleaser happens to have a Swords to Plowshares on the Ragavan. Turn 2, Flashfan plays out Karizev, Skyship Raider, and a Mox Amber. Freyleaser now deciding if they want to soul partition here the Karizev to keep Flashfan off of the mana they get from the Mox Amber. Thinking really hard about this. Now, if, for example, Flashfan has no mountain and they don't draw a mountain next turn, this is going to be a huge, huge setback to them. So we get 1 land, and we get a Fable of the Mirror Breaker from Flashfan. Freyleaser plays a 1-drop, Hotshot Mechanic, and Selfless Spirit, so has 4 power on board. Flashfan's turn, going to discard a mountain, draws an extra card, goes ahead and plays Karizev back out and swings in with Goblin Shaman from the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, making a token. Freyleaser goes ahead and blocks with Hotshot Mechanic. So Freya's turn. Freya draws Legion's Landing. It's going to go ahead and play Light Spellbinder. Flashfan in response bolts the Selfless Spirit for 2 with play with fire. Light Spellbinder is going to find in Freyleaser's hand Uthgart Fury and Ancrop Crasher. So in either case, these are both 3-drops. Freyleaser is going to have to choose one, but they're Flash Fan is going to have the mana to play either during their next turn with the Mox Amber and the treasure token from the Goblin Shaman. Flash Fan's turn, the Saga flips, Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Flash Fan torches the tower on the 3/1 flyer. The Light Spellbinder plays Encrop Crasher and swings in with Carry Zev and the Crasher. Freyleaser, here, no matter what they play, unfortunately, is going to have to know that it's going to get hit by Uthgardt Fury. So goes ahead and plays out Flowering of the White Tree instead of Adeline. Flash Fan plays out a dashed Ragavan. Uses Reflection of the Fable Break of Kiki Jiki on Encrop Crasher. It's going to be able to exert the token to make the vampire token that Freyleaser has unable to block, which means Ragavan is going to get in, generate another token, and Freyleaser is going to drop to 8 life with 1 card in hand, and Adeline hasn't been played yet. So Freyleaser's turn, draws a plane, plays out Adeline, who's now a 4/5 thanks to Flowering of the White Tree, and holding a Conclave Tribunal in hand. Cannot play it out because that would be lethal on board if they were to convoke it. Trying to figure out if they should attack in with the lifelinker or not. If they don't and Uthgardt Fury hits them, that could be game.
Es Lido.
So Freyleaser's really thinking hard about this. If they don't swing in and the Uthgardt Fury hits the vampire token, they have a 4/5, but Encrop Crasher is, I believe, going to be able to make Adeline unblockable, unable to block, and that would just be lethal. Even if they do swing in here, they go up to 10. Flash Fan has 6 damage from the 2 Encrop Crashers, and 7 damage from 9 damage using Carry Zev as well. So let's see. First, we're going to have, on Flash Fan's turn, a Ragavan played out. Freyleaser decided not to attack. We have Access Tunnel used on the Ragavan, who's going to be able to get in for 2. Let's see what it exiles. Is that an invasion of Gabakan? It is. Okay, we're going to be able to hit that Conclave Tribunal, and this is really unfortunate for the Adeline player, for Freyleaser. We'll see what the top deck is. It is Banalish Knight. Knight something or other. The 2/1 that can well, we'll get back to that in a moment. In any case, Freyleaser is going to attack in, possibly with both of their creatures. Deciding to swing in with just Adeline, who's 4/5, so would have to be double blocked here and could potentially be replayed. It's going to swing in with both Adeline and the token. Flash Fan using Reflection to make a token to help chump block, a token of Encrop Crasher. Blocks the 2/2 lifelinker and lets Adeline get in. Here we go with the Knight, the 1-drop that's played out. And that will be the end of Freyleiser's turn. Flash Fan draws. Uses the Reflection of Kiki Jiki ability to double up on Ancrop Crashers. Plays out Feldon and Ragavan dashed, and is going to go ahead and swing, I believe, with everything here, exerting the Ancrop Crashers, making both of Freya's creatures unable to block. And I think this could have been done a turn earlier, but in the end, still gets there and is able to take out Freyleaser. So that looks like it was the second match. It's tied 1-1, the series is. And here we go into game 3. So the winner of this will move on in the bracket and face Birthing Potter or Fading Cargo, who is unfortunately having the direct challenge bug and is currently reinstalling Magic the Gathering Arena on their computer. Freya leads turn 1, planes into Usher of the Fallen. And what else do we expect from a Ragavan player than a Mountain and Ragavan? Freya's draw for the turn is Lost to Legend. Great draw, but also has a few 2-drops, including Thalia they could play. Is thinking about what to do. Freya's going to go ahead and attack first, see if there's a block. A trade offer made, there's not. Is going to pass the turn with 2 mana up. Lost to Legend in hand means that they can very easily send Ragavan back to the command zone. This looks like what they're going to do. As Flash Fan passes to attackers, they're going to Lost to Legend on Ragavan. And now Flash Fan is going to choose to put it back into the command zone and play out Dire Fleet Daredevil. Perhaps. Looks like instead they're going to play out Pillar of Flame, exiling the 1-drop from Freyleaser, who now can possibly play out 2 creatures. Goes to their second main, is going to play Boroskir Tollkeeper. Take a look at Flash Fan's hand. In response, Flash Fan is going to go ahead and torch the tower to kill the Tollkeeper. The Tollkeeper still gets to take a look at the hand and is going to choose the 3rd land, which will now come into play dropped. So Flash Fan does draw another mountain off the top. Luck or skill, you decide. And it's now thinking about what to do, because even with that 3rd land, alright, they're going to go ahead and play Overcooked. At the beginning of their end step, they create a food token. And there's some other text. Not quite sure what it is. Gonna be honest here. They pass the turn. Freyleaser plays out the 3rd land and plays out Adeline and swings in for 3 with the Recruitment Officer and the Adeline token. Ragavan's turn, Flash Fan's turn, draws another mountain. So what does Food Fight do? Well, we will find out in a little bit. As the Ragavan player is going to go ahead and use Voltaic Surge, sacrificing the food to kill Adeline, and then play out Mana Gorger Phoenix. Freyleaser is going to go ahead and play out Thalia. Still has Swords to Plowshares and Cathar Commando in hand. Swings in with the Recruitment Officer and the token, the human 1/1 token. Is then going to play out Dire Fleet Daredevil and cast Lost to Legend on the Thalia. And swing in with the Mana Gorger Phoenix. Freyleaser on their end step is going to go ahead and play Cathar Commando. And then for their turn, they draw a Wandering Emperor. Emperor. So they're going to go ahead and swing with everything. Flashfan blocks the recruitment officer with the Direfleet Daredevil. So Freyleaser flashes in the Wandering Emperor adds a counter, and the trade is made. Flashfan draws a Soul Seer and uses it to get rid of the Wandering Emperor, swings in for 2 with the Mana Gorger Phoenix, and passes the turn. Freyleaser draws Adeline, draws another land, has 5 lands, and plays out Adeline. Goes ahead and swings in with the Cathar Commander and 2 tokens. All right, I step away for a moment there. I come back, I find a Rahilda, a Ragavan, and another enchantment. I'm not sure what it is on Flashfan's side of the field. Freyleaser draws and plays out the white adversary and is able to pump it, giving all of their creatures +1/+1. Swords on Rahilda. And then swings in with everybody for lethal, taking the game. So that is 2-1 Freyleaser over Flashfan, and we're going to take a little break as we figure out who's playing next. Remember, one of our winners bracket players has, unfortunately, the direct challenge bug. Again, thank you to Flashfan for bringing Ragavan. That is the I think 4th or 5th time Flashfan has brought Ragavan. Unfortunately, never able to get into the top 4 before. This time they were. So congratulations. Thank you for competing regularly in the league. And nice performance here. Freyleaser will move on, and we await word from Fading Cargo as to whether or not they've been able to resolve their problem. So just to re-summarize for those of you who are tuning in or were not here for the earlier message, one of our players is encountering the direct challenge bug. If you've never heard of this bug before, unfortunately, it's quite terrible and puts a direct stop in their ability to direct challenge other players. When they try and load into the direct challenge, it says there's an error loading their deck. There's no definitive fix to this bug. Even uninstalling on all platforms, mobile, desktop, laptop, and otherwise, does not guarantee a fix. The bug does not last forever, but has an indefinite period during which that player is unable to compete in direct challenge matches. This is a known bug to Wizards. There has not been a fix made for it yet. Of course, this throws any tournament, such as ours, relying on direct challenges into quite an uncertain state. As has happened now with Fading Cargo, we have players who may, for no apparent reason, with no warning, encounter this bug and be unable to complete the remainder of their matches. Fading Cargo has just reinstalled the entire client on their desktop and is trying to load into game as we speak. So we'll have an update on that in a moment. If Fading Cargo is unable to play through, then we will have to, unfortunately, give them a loss. And Freyleaser will move on to play Birthing Potter. So we'll have an Uro versus Adeline matchup. So just with some analysis of how things have played out for the moment, if that would happen, Adeline, I'm going to go ahead and say, is favored versus Uro. As a super fast aggro deck with a lot of ways to disrupt Uro. But, of course, an early counter spell on Adeline could mean that Uro is able to resolve and hold up counter magic and protection, and just lock Adeline out of the game. So we will see what happens. Fading Cargo, it seems like, is not able to enter into direct challenges for the moment. So again, this is really an unfortunate bug. And please, whatever socials you're on, let Wizards know that we had a player who was eliminated from our tournament because of this bug, which is just absurd. There's no reason that we should have a bug like this that's been around for several weeks, known to Wizards with no fix released. And this is not just affecting our community, it's also affecting any communities such as the Magic the Gathering Arena Pauper community that rely on direct challenges in order to play matches. It affects tournaments, but it also affects casual play. Really, just no excuse that this hasn't been repaired yet. So please let Wizards know you'd like to see this bug repaired, the direct challenge bug. You're helping us out and yourself out if you play direct challenge, as well as all of the other communities. So we'll be back in a moment when we figure out whether or not Fading Cargo is able to play or not. Bear with us. In about 5 minutes, we'll be back. All right, while we wait for our players to work out whether or not Fading Cargo will be able to compete, again, owing to the direct challenge bug, let's look at the meta a little bit of this tournament. We had Flashfan running Ragavan, an aggro deck, Dark Flame Master running Judith, an aggro deck, Freyleaser running Adeline, an aggro deck, and Mortrid running Pippin, an aggro tempo deck. Now, I know that you may be thinking, that's a lot of aggro decks, and when I try and play aggro on the queue, my results aren't great. Well, first of all, I'm sorry that you're playing all your Historic Brawl on the queue. I just feel bad for you. The queue is really not a pleasant place to play Historic Brawl. You're forced into one-on-one situations. Who knows whatever the algorithm wants to pair you against. It is not going to be a pleasant experience. You could just come join our league, join our community, the Historic Brawl Hub. We have 11 seasons going. Each season is a month, so that's almost a year we have of actual play. In reality, we've been around a bit longer than that. We offer a month-long league. Each week, 4 weeks to the league, you are paired against 3 opponents who have signed up to the league, and the better you perform, the higher ranked opponents you're paired against. Likewise, the worse you perform, the lower ranked opponents you're paired against. So we offer an experience for everyone, really. If you bring a janky deck, you'll find yourself paired against other people with decks that aren't performing so well. If you really are out there to win the competitive meta, you'll be playing other people who are out there to win the competitive meta, and we always offer best of 3. Every match is a best of 3 match. This is important. As you all know from playing on the queue, no one is going to have a good time when your opponent casts Rusko on turn 2 off of a Dark Ritual, or a turn 1 Liliana of the Veil, or if there attracts a deck that's half counter spells, happens to have all the right answers to you at the beginning, while also finding their ramp and hitting Atraxa on turn 5. These are situations that don't always happen when you play best of 3. They might happen for one game, but not the other 2. Of course, there will be situations when your opponent goes turn 1 Ragavan, Moxamber into removal twice in a row, and there's not much you can do about that. But you have 2 other best of 3 matches to make up for that, and at the end of the season, the 8 players with the highest results get to play together in a double elimination tournament, which is what this stream is. Now, we have a lot of aggro decks. It's a highly aggressive meta. It turns out when you play in a meta where control decks, where combo decks, and where aggro decks all meet each other, unlike on the queue where depending on your commander, you're going to be limited into a very strict set of matches, aggro decks tend to perform quite well. Now you have the aggro tempo variety, that Mortrid is representing, or represented in this tournament with Pippin, playing a little more on-stack disruption, sacrificing having a more threatening commander for that disruption. You have the pure aggro, like Ragavan is, the aggro burn, that is to say, and Judith, another variety of the aggro burn. And you have aggro like Freyleaser brought with Adeline, who is one of the best performing commanders in the league. Because of the amount of disruption that actually exists in mono white, it's not just a commander that plays creatures. They're also going to disrupt you on the stack. Yes, it's true with cards like Mana Tithe, but also take a look at your hand with cards like the Tollkeeper, the Spellbinder, and the Invasion. And they're going to hit your creatures to move them out of the way. The damage adds up quickly, more quickly than a lot of you might be used to. Now, we also had Sithis in this tournament, Fading Cargo, who's currently trying to reconnect, to repair their broken, battered Magic the Arena client. I want to be clear, the battering comes from Wizards. not from the damage that they received this tournament, because they're in the winner's bracket. This is the bug that keeps them from playing in direct challenges. Sithis, an Enchantress deck, performing quite well against the field, obviously being able to hold its own against aggro, but also against ramp decks like Azusa, Lost But Seeking. We have Azusa, the ramp deck, which unfortunately went out rather quickly in this tournament, but is capable of putting out great performances. It's one of the trickier decks to pilot. You might say, oh, mono green, that's easy. You just play lands and play big creatures. To some extent, yes. But Azusa is a toolbox deck, masquerading as a ramp deck. It has a wide variety of answers, but you have to know which answer to use in which situation and when to search for that answer. And if you're not highly experienced with the deck, that can be a very difficult challenge. We have an Atraxa deck, but as you'll see from the results, the Atraxa deck was out in 2 matches. Turns out when you put Atraxa against really aggressive decks and control decks, it does not perform. So despite what you've seen on the queue, it's really difficult to make a 7-mana commander work in a really competitive environment. There are going to be decks that go under them, and there are going to be decks that just stonewall them. And in this tournament, Dr. Django piling Atraxa ran into both of those and lost. Uro, control deck in the simic sense of control, so not playing a lot of board wipes, but playing a lot of on-stack interaction in the form of counter spells, tends to perform well. You can see here they beat Ragavan 2-1, but is always at the risk of hard control matchups. Luckily, they don't have any hard control opponents, or aggro going under them. Judith and Ragavan, again, both burn-based aggro commanders. This is the typical meta of the top of the league. So if you're really wanting to bring your A game and see how your favorite commanders compete, how they fare against other experienced historic brawl players, then the league is the place for you to do that. Our next season is starting soon. You have about 8 hours left. You can join our Discord. And link to in chat, and check out the league for yourself. Of course, if you miss the first week, you can join at any point during the league, the second, third, or fourth weeks. You're going to have less opportunity to make it to the finals because you'll have accrued less points missing your first set of games. But for those of you that just like playing Historic Brawl, even if you don't want to play in the league, recommend you join and just spar against our community. We have a Looking for Games channel where you're free to look for a match versus anyone at any level, competitive or more jankier. Now I'm going to take a moment and figure out who is playing next, and we'll be back shortly. All right, here we are back with the the finals. Now, Frey Laser in the loser's bracket, Birthing Potter in the upper bracket. Unfortunately, Fading Cargo was unable to get their client to work. So despite having an undefeated run up to the quarterfinals, they were forced to drop out of the tournament because of the bug. So please let Wizards know that you want to see this direct challenge bug fixed. And get into this game. We have Uro on the play, taking a mulligan. Freyleaser with 1 white source. Not enough to cast Adeline in the opening hand, but with a Curse of Silence offering disruption to Uro to see if they keep or not. Uro pressed in this matchup to be able to deal with the board or keep the board from being installed. Freya does go ahead and mulligan. Swords, great here against Uro, although it does give 6 life. We have a really nice creature curb, 1, 2, 3 in the hand, with Adeline representing a possible third. Second, third 3-drop. So this definitely could be a keepable hand. We'll see if Freyleaser wants to keep it. Uro, meanwhile, Scoot Swarm. 3 lands and Scoot Swarm. Scoot Swarm, really a great answer here to Adeline. Of course, if it gets Swords to Plowshare before it can generate a token of itself, it's not going to do as much, but if it is kept alive somehow and on board, it can generate 1/1 chump blockers for days, especially with a deck like Uro that will be drawing and playing a lot of lands. Kami of the Bamboo Groves is a potential turn 1 play into Kalini Gardens. Also gives 2 blockers right off of the bat. The Glorious Scale and Reject lets the Uro player keep the Adeline player from establishing board presence while having the blockers up. Potentially letting the Uro player escape Uro before they take too much health damage. So it looks like we have Freyleaser, who is going to go ahead and set up their system to record. We have a question. If we're looking at Birthing Potter's hand on the play, they can turn 1 Kalini Gardens and hold up Kami of Bamboo Grove to discard and get more lands off of, which, depending how they draw, may be what they want to do. So their first turn play may be the Kami, or it may be discarding the Kami into its channeled ability later on. What would you do if this was your play? Would you play out the Kami of Bamboo Groves turn 1, or would you play out the Gardens turn 1 as your tap land, generating the blocker, and then pass? The Adeline player has a very clear turn 1 play with Dauntless Bodyguard. Very clear turn 2 play for the moment with Guardian of New Benalia, and then turn 3 is going to be the choice based on what sort of mana Birthing Potter leaves up, the Uro player leaves up, Anointed Peacekeeper or Adeline. Alright, it looks like the players are ready and set to move into the game. And I am ready and set to give you commentary after finishing my vegan dumpling soup. And here we go. Turn 1 play from Birthing Potter does indeed look like the Kalini Gardens, generating the 0-1 blocker. Freya, for their turn, the Adeline player, draws Cheeky House Mouse. So they debate a little bit, and then they play out Dauntless Bodyguard. They've got a 2-power creature on board. Freyalizer, for their turn, is going to draw. Birthing Potter, I'm sorry, is going to draw. Dreamroot Cascade, and is going to go ahead and pass with their 2 lands. It does look like they are favoring keeping up Kami of the Bamboo Groves and being able to channel it for its 3 lands later on. Freyalizer, meanwhile, draws Luminarch Aspirant, which is more aggressive 2-drop than Guardian of New Benalia, especially in this matchup. But in any case, we'll go to attackers first, so not going to get that extra counter. And perhaps sensing counter magic, plays out Guardian of New Benalia, holding the Luminarch Aspirant for later. Birthing Potter does indeed have that counter magic, as we know, with Reject, and the 2-2 Indestructible goes to the graveyard. The Uro player, Birthing Potter, is trying to figure out whether or not they want to hold up interaction for Glorious, hold up the mana, the 2 mana for Glorious Gale as their second counter spell. And it does look like that's the case, as some of the finest Magic players of Historic Brawl have said, you don't cast spells and win the game, and that seems to be the strategy that Birthing Potter is adopting here. Versus Adeline, Freyalizer will draw and play out a 3rd land for their turn. The draw is an Usher of the Fallen, and goes straight to combat. So no Adeline coming down, no Luminarch Aspirant coming down. We'll pass to the 2nd main and play out Usher of the Fallen and Cheeky House Mouse. So preferring not to take advantage of the Cheeky House Mouse's activated ability. Also, having Mutavault means they can only play 2 white sources, which they cast the creatures with, and indeed, Birthing Potter takes the line where they play out the channeled Kami of the Bamboo Groves on their turn, give themselves the extra forest in hand. So they are able now to go ahead and play Uro, put a 2nd land on the battlefield, and hold up Glorious Gale. They pass the turn with 2 mana up, and Freyalizer on their turn. They have the board with 3 2/2s. Do not draw a land, so they're still at 3 land only. Trying to figure out what to play. Do they want to play the Anointed Peacekeeper, the Westfold Rider, or the Luminarch Aspirant? The Rider, the draw for the turn. Now, the Peacekeeper, whatever they play, is probably going to get countered, unless they play the Rider. Now, if they play a 2-drop and it gets countered, and they do play the Westfold Rider, 3/1, that can be sacrificed to destroy target enchantment or artifact, but only as a sorcery. It does not get countered. The Uro player draws Cyclonic Rift, which is a great draw here. Plays Scoot Swarm, and immediately Freyalizer goes to that Swords to Plowshares, recognizing what a threat the Scoot Swarm can be, and goes ahead and swords the original. Now, because Freyalizer, Birthing Potter had 6 or more lands, they do get the token that's a copy of the original, so they can still build up their Scoot Swarm army in the long run. And they're still holding up Glorious Scale, and they drew Cyclonic Rift. So the Adeline player is going to have to fight through a lot of interaction here. Again, opting to go to combat before playing out the Luminarch Aspirant, valuing it very, very highly in this matchup, as well as Adeline, their commander, is going to go play Cave of the Frost Dragon tapped and play out a Anointed Peacekeeper. This is going to get countered. Now, Freyleaser doesn't know this, but that's the last counter spell that the Uro player had in hand. Of course, the Cyclonic Rift is going to be a huge tempo shift here, letting them get many Scoot Swarm on the battlefield before the Adeline player could re-establish a board. The Uro player goes ahead and plays Winding Way, gets 2 lands in hand. One of the lands being Fabled Passage, which will really help with the Scoot Swarm triggers. And it looks like the Uro player, Birthing Potter, is going to privilege escaping Uro instead of getting the Scoot Swarm going immediately. And seeing that, the Adeline player just concedes. So that's game 1 to Uro. He was able, thanks to Scoot Swarm, to set up a board state that would have been able to just block anything Adeline sends at them. And we move into game 2. Now, Birthing Potter is coming from the winner's final, so if Birthing Potter wins this next game, that's a win for them and a first tournament win for Uro. We should mention that they did manage to skip their quarterfinal opponent due to their quarterfinal opponent fading cargo, encountering the direct challenge bug. So let's take a look at this hand. Freyleaser's hand, 2 mana, Cathar Commando, Invasion of Gobakan. They have 2 2-drops, 2 3-drops, and a 4-drop on 2 lands. Very non-aggressive start. So they mulligan, they find 4 planes, a Giant Killer, Invasion of Gobakan, and Skyclave Apparition, which can hit Uro. They're waiting to see if Birthing Potter keeps or not, and so are we. Birthing Potter does mulligan, they do not keep. And we can maybe take a look at their hand. It looks, look at their mulligan choices. It looks like Freyleaser has opted to mulligan an additional time. So here we have the mulligan choices from both players. Freyleaser will accept that mulligan. Birthing Potter will mulligan an additional time. And we will see if they keep that hand or not. With Stern Scolding and Glorious Scale, they do wind up keeping it. And we'll soon see what they choose to keep in their hand. Now this is, again, not an aggressive opening for the Adeline player. We have a Fragment Reality as their only turn 1 play, but it's not going to have any target to hit. And then we have 2 2-drops that aren't particularly aggressive in themselves, and if there is no 3rd land, this could be a big problem. The Uro player plays out Mishra's Bauble. Their turn. It's going to target the Adeline player, Freyleaser, see the top of their library, draw a card next turn, plays out Hall of the Storm Giants, and passes the turn. Freyleaser draws Guardian of New Benalia, not a land, so starting to be a little bit worried probably about hitting the 3rd land. Plays out Copper Colt Vanguard, which gets countered by Stern Scolding. The Uro player is going to go ahead and play out a 2nd land. Freyleaser, the Adeline player, does still not drop that 3rd land. I'm going to draw that 3rd land, and is going to go ahead and play Guardian of New Benalia. We'll see if the Uro player wants to counter this or not. As a 2-2, it's not particularly threatening, but its enlist ability does mean that it can pump itself up later in the game when there's more on board. The Uro player, Birthing Potter, lets that resolve, draws for their turn, plays out a third land as tapped, and goes ahead and passes with 2 mana up, which is enough to cast Glorious Gale, countering whatever creature Birthing Potter plays. Now, Birthing Potter does have 3 white sources, can play Thalia's Lieutenant and Usher of the Fallen. The question is ordering here. They can also go for Invasion of Gobakan, which is what they're choosing to do. Now, there's a Spell Pierce that can be played. The Uro player does have, and that's what they're gonna throw at the invasion, beating off the field, and instead Freyleaser will play Usher instead of being able to resolve the invasion. Usher of the Fallen, 2-1. The Uro player's turn again, plays an island for turn, and goes ahead and plays Uro, getting to drop another land from their hand. And they'll put down Captivating Crossroads, which enters untapped, giving them the mana for Glorious Gale. And their life is still up at a glorious, speaking of glorious, 26, which is not what the Adeline player wants to be seeing at this stage in the game. And with only 3 mana to play, goes ahead and launches their Adeline into the counter spell, unfortunately. So here comes Glorious Gale hitting the Adeline, which sent back to the command zone, and the Guardian enlists to get the extra 2 damage from the Usher, and Scry 2 both are moved to the bottom. Now, even with the Fragment Reality here, knowing that cards like Scoot Swarm exist in the opponent's deck, hitting Uro, actually, if Uro is hit, will only count as 2, so hitting Uro isn't that bad with Fragment Reality. That's a possibility. Birthing Potter is going to go ahead and cycle on their turn Generous End to get another card. And then is going to go ahead and play Uro. Now, the Adeline player also has Fateful Absence, 2 ways of getting rid of Uro here. And the Uro player, Birthing Potter, is down to just a few cards in hand with the Salundi Vision, the Balaged Recovery, and the Kalundi Gardens, which is going to go, or the Kalani Gardens, which is going to go into the battlefield and generate the 0/1 plant token. So we now have the Uro player establishing a field quite successfully, maintaining their life total high, while the Adeline player is still struggling just to draw anything. That is a land, to draw any lands or anything that's relevant in the situation. Drops the Fateful Absence on the Uro, sending it back to the graveyard, where Birthing Potter opts to keep it, and is going to go ahead and most likely enlist here, losing out on 2 damage from the Usher of the Fallen, but really trying to look for lands. So it does see 2 lands on top, keeps 1 of them on top, which will let them double spell next turn with Thalia's Lieutenant and Thalia, which, if they can resolve both, will add a significant amount of pressure to the board. Birthing Potter considers, casts Consider during combat, is going to bin a land and draw Winding Way. Great card to get Uro back to the battlefield. So here comes Winding Way. I'm going to choose land, placing 2 cards in the yard and drawing 2 lands and Hard Evidence, which is another chop blocker and is a 0/3. It's more than any of the creatures on Freyleiser's side of the field can dish out at the moment. Does go ahead and cast that Hard Evidence, and then is going to go ahead and escape Uro. So it's another 3 life, another land from hand onto the battlefield. And in response to the trigger on the stack, the Uro trigger on the stack, Freyleiser is going to cast Fragment Reality on it and get a Kami of the Bamboo Groves. And off the Uro trigger draws a Growth Spiral, which they're going to be able to cast another card towards reactivating Uro. Birthing Potter actually having to send the Uro back to hand there because of the exile effect. Now we have the double play, indeed, the Thalia, Guardian of Thraben on Freyleiser's turn, followed by Thalia's Lieutenant. Birthing Potter is going to Growth Spiral while they can, draws a land, Tranquil Thicket, and is probably going to put this land into play. Chooses not to put the land into play. Thalia's Lieutenant buffing up the Guardian of New Benalia and Thalia. So Guardian of New Benalia swings in using its Enlist ability and scries 2 lands to the bottom. Not looking for the next turn Thalia play, which is interesting. And that 5 damage is just chump blocked with the 0/1 plant token. And there's still 2 chump blockers on Uro's side of the field here. The Uro player cycles Tranquil Thicket. That's why they opted not to put it in play. Is going to sacrifice one of their clues from Fateful Absence to draw. They have another draw with the second clue from Hard Evidence if they wish. They draw a land, a Vine Glimmer Snarl that will enter the battlefield tapped. Now they have a Make Disappear in hand, but with Thalia it's going to cost 3. So if they want to hold up that interaction, they're going to have to leave 3 mana up. If they don't, it means that potentially next turn Adeline is coming down from Freyleiser, or another threat, an Intrepid Adversary, for example, that could buff for 1, buff the team, for 1 Valor counter. Birthing Potter is going to sacrifice the clue and draw again, draws Seagate Restoration, which they're going to play tapped. And with the Saloon Division in hand, they're going to pass the turn, being able to counter and using Make Disappear. So Freyleiser draws the Luminarch Aspirant and plays. Birthing Potter opts not to counter. The Luminarch Aspirant is going to buff probably Usher of the Fallen here so that it can swing in without dying to the Kami, but instead goes to the Guardian of New Benalia, which is interesting given what he's done so far with enlisting it. He will choose not to enlist it and will swing in with everything. Possibly he's getting the Guardian of New Benalia ready to go face-to-face with Uro. Preparing for that already. But this does mean that the Kami of Bamboo Groves is going to have a free block on Usher of the Fallen, although its boast ability can be activated. We'll see if Freyliza remembers that. And does not choose to make that block, instead blocking with the crab token. No, okay, there we go. Birthing Potter's changing the blocks. Kami of Bamboo Groves on Usher of the Fallen, and the crab token on Thalia's Lieutenant. There is the activation of Usher of the Fallen before damage, buffing Thalia's Lieutenant to a 3/3 as the 1/1 human token enters the battlefield. Now the board is clear. The board is clear. Uro comes out once, drawing Bark Channel Pathway. The draw for turn was Line Up the Shot. And then is Uro going to come out immediately a second time? Seems that it will. So here's Uro a second time coming out. The pathway can come down now, but there is not counter magic up, which is important for the Adeline player, because Adeline can come out next turn if there is a land drawn. So not a land, unfortunately, an Esper Sentinel, but the Uro player has more than enough mana to cast around Esper Sentinel, and we'll go ahead in reaction. In response, we'll play You Line Up the Shot to draw a card. Draws Merfolk's Secret Keeper. Luminarch Aspirant, figuring out who to buff here. We'll go ahead and buff now. We're seeing the problem with buffing the Guardian of New Benalia is that it still can't get past Uro. It's going to be at least 3 turns before it can, and even if it activates its Enlist ability, it's going to get +X+O, and there are no cards left in hand, so it will die. It will hit Uro and die, and despite that, it looks like that's going to be the choice here by Freyliza, who's going to find Recruitment Officer and Bounty Agent on top of their deck, and Recruitment Officer would represent card advantage, but at this point in the game with the Uro on so many lands, it's questionable whether that card advantage is really going to do anything at all. The amount of time it's going to take to activate is really just detrimental to your aggro game plan. And indeed is going to leave Bounty Agent on top as sort of a last-ditch anti-Uro tech. Uro is going to block, and we'll go back to the graveyard. That is the end of the Guardian of New Benalia. The next turn, you can buff the Lieutenant with the Bounty Agent on top if it resolves, as well as the Luminarch Aspirant. But right now, it's the Uro player's turn. The Uro player mills themselves with Merfolk Secret Keeper and has drawn a Cyclonic Rift off the top, which can completely deal with the board here. And from this point, it is looking like the Uro player can just take over. They can escape Uro, which they may do, for 4. They're still going to have 5 mana left over to, no, 6 mana left over to do with as they like. So here comes Uro again. There's the counter spell, there's the Cyclonic Rift, there's the Tamiyo and Birthing Potter's Hand. Now the Adeline player doesn't know about these yet. The Uro draw hits a Lotus Field, which gets 2 more lands back to the yard, so Uro is again ready, or nearly ready, to come right back out after the instants in hand are played out. Merfolk Secret Keeper hits the board, so there are 2 great blockers now. We're going to see a Brainstorm possibly here too. from Freyleaser, but decides to hold it in hand. There's no urgent need to play it, and passes the turn back to Adeline, who draws the Bounty Agent off the top. Now we could see with the Merfolk Secret Keeper, the Make Disappear, keeping the Bounty Agent off, but there's no real need for that either. Thalia's Lieutenant gets the buff from the Bounty Agent and the Luminarch Aspirant, indeed building it up to a 7/7. It swings in, but with two chump blocks here, this is just a free attack phase for the Uro player, who's still at 25 life. Uro's going to go ahead and Brainstorm and pay the Esper Sentinel tax. Draws 3. Pact of Negation, Thirst for Discovery, and Forsaken Crossroads. Puts the Thirst and the Pact of Negation back on top. Is going to Cyclonic Rift the Adeline player's field, and that's game. The Adeline player sees that and concedes. So, congratulations to Birthing Potter, who takes down the tournament, shy one match that they didn't get to play against Fading Cargo, and wins the Season 10 tournament, top-8 tournament of the Brawl Hub Historic Brawl League. Now, thank you, Freyleaser, for playing. Adeline again in the finals, falling short. It's the second time Adeline has reached the finals and not been able to get past. But great matches, certainly, by both players. Thank you to all the players for their participation. And we'll go for a moment into the Brawl Hub Discord server, and we can take a little bit of a look. I'll show you around. So this is where we play. We organize our matches. We definitely invite you to come and to check out league rules and announcements. This is where you'll find information on submitting a league sign-up form. It's the first thing you need to do. And then submitting your deck lists for whichever league you're going to play in, whichever week you're going to play in. This is our custom ban list. So any cards that have an asterisk next to them are cards that have been voted on by the community to be added to our custom ban list. So you'll see Teferi, Harry of Dominaria, Rusko, and Rafine Scheming Seer, as well as Lear, are all banned in the league. Lear was not voted on for a ban, but because of the direct challenge state, where any direct challenge match you make loads in Historic Brawl format as a friendly Brawl deck list, all Alchemy Rebalanced cards revert to their original paper version if it was not an Alchemy card to begin with. And Lear is one of those cards. So Lear still is active during either player's turn. And in our most recent survey, we have a survey sent out following each season. Lear came very close to being unbanned as commander, but was unbanned in the 99. So in our 99, we have, this is commander and the 99. We have some of the other cards that are Alchemy Rebalanced here, Minsk and Boo, Timeless Heroes, Teferi, and Winota on the ban list. The other custom cards on the ban list are the One Ring, which does not have the rebalance that it does in the queue, and Wash Away. These were both voted on by the community and received more than 60% of the votes. And then as the watch list, we don't have any commanders who have received close votes to be banned, but Dark Ritual and Blood Moon, especially Dark Ritual, have been perennial targets, never quite reaching the 60% threshold. Dark Ritual, many players feel, gives too much variance to the earlier parts of the game, and Blood Moon, with its ability to just shut down other decks, some players feel is not a fair card in the format, but neither have been banned yet. So please join our server if you want to play. Brawl Hub Discord server. Check out League rules and sign up to find links to the sign up and your deck list submission forms. You still have time to make the first week of Season 11, or you can just look for an opponent in the Looking for Opponent channel. Chat with us in the general channel. We love Historic Brawl here. We have forums for all commanders that you could want, and if we don't have the commander you're looking for, just go ahead and ask in the Request Commander channel. Thanks for watching, in any case, and we look forward to seeing you in the next season. I'm going to go ahead and find a player that we can raid. So if you want to stick around just a moment, we'll see if anybody else is playing Historic Brawl, and we'll raid their stream. All right, so I'm sending you all over to Amazonian's channel. It looks like she's doing some coffee and cube drafting, and then going to move on to Historic Brawl. So enjoy.